Intimacy and Morality, Reading 3. Private life for working class families was burdened by tensions involving basic survival. Middle class families experienced tensions too, but of a different sort. Founded on love, companionship, and intimacy, the middle class family could become a pressure cooker of conflicting feelings and desires, of guilt and shame, of misunderstood communication and resentment. Family members often fought over money, but the confining expectations of intimacy could be worse. Do not admit anyone else into your private life, into our thoughts, counseled a French man to his prospective wife in 1873. People understood such warnings. The home was a center of secrecy, and more often than not, at the heart of that secrecy was sex. For Britain's middle class in particular, this era witnessed the height of Victorian sexual morality. Sex was supposed to be little discussed and limited to the marriage bed, enclosed in a special, separate master bedroom with locked doors. Sexual problems shouldn't arise, but if they did, enlightened sufferers might turn to their doctor, the expert on sex, hygiene, and morality, all rolled into one. Mixing moralisms with an age of scientific authority, most doctors confirmed the standard view of other commentators. Healthy and prudent sexuality could take place only within the marriage. Affairs risked scandal, especially for a woman, and illegitimacy. Sex with prostitutes was unhygienic and somehow dangerous to the race. Doctors vaguely connected prostitution, syphilis, tuberculosis, and alcoholism as physical and social scourges, all resulting from venereal excesses. Most often, they blame women for being prostitutes, for forcing their husbands to visit prostitutes, or for having inappropriate sexual habits. As for homosexuality, people viewed it in an even worse light. Doctors labeled it a sickness or a psychological disorder. Newspapers added to the public condemnation of homosexuality by reporting, quote, scandalous affairs among public figures and uncovering homosexual subcultures. The trial and imprisonment for gross indecency of the famed British author Oscar Wilde in 1895 promoted a new awareness of homosexuality while revealing how far officials and the public would go to denounce it. Sexual realities. Despite these idealized, restrictive notions about proper sexual conduct, reality was quite different. Somehow people, especially the middle class, discuss sex enough to limit births. While many use old methods, abstinence and withdrawal, new information and methods became available. Men and women both used various different ways of birth control. Many resorted to abortion as a method of birth control, particularly in cases of illegitimacy. These methods seem to have worked. The birth rate declined in these years. In France, for example, it dropped from 33 per thousand in 1800 to 19 per thousand in 1910. Many people chose to limit births for economic reasons. As people moved from farms to the cities, they no longer needed so many children to help with the work. In the cities, the increasing costs of raising children deterred couples from having large families. Yet successful birth control among the middle classes caused concern, for many worried that, quote, the best of society were not reproducing themselves as quickly as poor and uncompetitive. Commentators argued that good families needed more children. Nationalists complained that competing states or alien peoples would overwhelm their nation or race if the fittest did not increase their fertility. Certainly, actual sexual behavior failed to live up to the standards of Victorian moralists. The best people had affairs, and illegitimacy remained high. Deadly sexually transmitted diseases rose and spread widely among all classes. In addition, prostitution thrived in many urban areas. Tens of thousands of prostitutes in the largest cities displayed themselves on streets and in city parks, and in windows and doorways. Some worked in bars or elegant brothels for a more select clientele. Working class women who lost jobs, domestic servants because of pregnancy, or young women on their own might turn to prostitution to survive. Men of all classes patronized prostitutes. Governments tried to control prostitution by requiring medical exams of prostitutes and limiting its practice in certain districts, to certain districts. Worse than these inconveniences were the risks of this life. Prostitutes were often subject to violence, the most famous example of which was the serial killings committed by Jack the Ripper in London in the late 1880s. By the end of the century, new attitudes, or perhaps the weight of reality, broke down some of the more restrictive notions of Victorian sexual propriety. More people accepted and expected mutual sexual enjoyment within marriage, and people became educated about the physical facts of sexual contact. Books, pamphlets, and talks about sex enabled women and men to read about the subject and sometimes even discuss it openly. Doctors, psychologists, and intellectuals began to study sex and see that it played a major role in individuals' senses of identity.